Book Club hosted by Heather Skinner. Gemma and I are so excited to be talking with Halie Fewkes today. She is the author of The Secrets of the Tally series. Book 1 of her series has been our featured February 2022 book of the month, and it got voted in because of the intrigue of its quote, "Secrets are most dangerous after they have been forgotten." She is also the creator of the ongoing 60-day novel writing challenge, which I am so happy to be a winner of. Her challenge helped me write my first draft and improve the second draft of it that I'm working on now. So thank you so much for being here, Halie. We're so happy to have you.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here, and I know you guys have a ton of questions. That's what I've been hearing from Gemma. So I'm excited to just chat with you guys about books and really just have a great time.
Oh, me too. Yeah, we've got a bunch of questions from the members. Gemma has the most questions for an author she's ever had. She is so excited to talk with you. So I am going to let Gemma take it away. Gemma, what is your first question for Halie?
So is this you on the front picture?
You know what? I get that a lot, and it's not. I don't know. I don't think I look like her at all. It's very funny. I get that a lot. I either get that I look like her or that I look like my character in book 1.
That was also one of my questions.
So let me kind of start this over. Start at the beginning. So it's a funny story because when I very first started my series, I was 12 years old. And so I did not look like this whatsoever, but that was what I wanted to look like. And so my first book took me 5 years of writing and 7 more years of editing before I finally published it. So if you can imagine that, it actually shaped my whole life. So I always aspired to be like that character who I was writing. This is one of the reasons I actually think writing is so important, is because it shaped who I became. I made her in the image of what I thought the coolest girl ever would look like. And then as those years went by, I was like, well, why don't I just look like that? And so I did. And so if you look, like, my hair is very similar to hers, if you can kind of tell. That was like not on purpose, but it's just because I spent all of those years kind of idolizing her as a character and how brave she was and how she would always stand up for the right thing no matter what. That's who she is. And so that's who I always wanted to be. And so it's funny because she actually looked like that first. And then as the years went by, I grew to look like her. But this girl, I don't feel like I look like her, but I do actually get that a lot. You are not the first person to ask that.
That was the first thing she asked me when I started reading book 3 this month. She's like, is that Halie?
It's not. It is not. But it is funny how your characters resemble you, but you also, if you work on them long enough, can actually grow to resemble them as well. Kind of neat.
There's something really special about that because an author puts so much of themselves into a book and into a character. So it's kind of cool to see, that association too, that even people can be like, wow, this is the author and this is their book and this is like this great combination. So I love that question. What do you think? Yeah. What's your next one? I know you had a bunch.
I forget because I had so much.
You forget because you had so much?
That's why you gotta write them down, otherwise you forget.
Right? I'm a big list person. So don't worry, I wrote down what you told me the other day so I can help you remember. What do you think? You want to move on to your question? Do you remember? Thank you. So I don't want to cover anyone's faces here. So this is awesome. This is Halie's companion picture book to the series, which I have to say thank you so much to give this kind of awesome reading experience where an adult or, even young adult can be reading your series and then at the same time sharing an experience of reading with someone younger. I really love it. It's amazing. Gemma loves this book. And what did you want to ask about Macho and the Great Dragon Escape?
In the back, it looks like you took a picture of a dog's nose and carved it for Macho's.
So what she was noticing with the illustrations when we were reading it, she said the nose looks like a real nose. Like there's something that sticks out in the illustration, and she was wondering if the illustration was made with a picture of a real dog nose and then the drawing around it.
No, it isn't. But so I think why you're seeing that is because Angelique is the one who illustrates it, right? She does all the pictures. So I come up with the story, characters, and then she brings them to life by drawing them. She has a rich history in doing pets. She does like lots and lots of animals. So she has done probably 1 million puppies in her lifetime, but And so she knows what a puppy nose looks like, just for, like, she could probably do it in her sleep at this point, right? So I think that maybe that's what happened, is she's so used to doing things like puppy noses and puppy eyes, but she busts out that puppy, and she probably can just do it with her eyes closed at this point. But then not a lot of people have had her draw dragons in the past, because she's been doing a lot of real life pets. And I was the first person who said, hey, let's do some pretend animals, right? So I think that what that is just that she was so on point with the puppies, that nose came out looking almost real. And if you look up some of her other artwork, I don't know if we can like edit it into the video or anything, but her animals are lifelike. And so sometimes I have to be like, Angelique, this puppy's too real. I need you to pull it back a little bit. That's actually something that we have to do sometimes, because he needs to match everything else in the scene. And sometimes the puppy on different pages would come out looking too real. So if you're feeling like that nose was maybe looking like a real actual puppy nose, that's what happened, is maybe we didn't pull back enough on the realism of it. So it's kind of funny you bring that up, because we do every once in a while have to go back and redo the puppy so he doesn't look more real than the dragons.
That's really cool. She's fascinated when we read through. She'll kind of point at the nose like, is that a real nose? Like, she just can't let it go. She loves it though. It's so cute.
Yeah, it's not. That's actually Angelique drawing it.
Yeah. And the bag, they're also cute together.
Aren't they so sweet? I know. I love that bunch of little rascals.
And another thing that you had mentioned that you were curious about when we were reading again the other night, right? You remember you wanted to ask about this part on the front cover too? So sorry about the glare.
Is the dragon holding a horseshoe or fake teeth?
It's a collar. It's actually the collar that's off of his neck. It says Spike, because that's how Macho knows that his name is Spike, is that he has that collar on him. Also a very good question.
Yeah, because she noticed it. She's like, I think those are his teeth. How did he get his name in there? And then when we read, she's like, wait, the teeth aren't there anymore. I'm like, I don't know if those are teeth.
No, that's his collar. But also a very good question. What else you got for me, Gemma? What other questions?
You wanted to ask if it was going to be a
sequel.
Yes, it is. So Macho has been very, very popular, which, I kind of had a feeling he would be, but we had to get it out in the world, see how people liked it. But it is kind of like you mentioned, it's a cool experience that the parents can be reading the main series. And then, this puppy on the cover of book 4, that is Macho. So then the kids can see, oh, I'm reading about the same characters that Mom is. And so Macho has done extremely well. And so we are actually wrapping up the artwork on book 2 right now. And so what I have to do is get all those files ready to send off. And then we're probably going to be releasing book 2 more like Christmas of this year, just because we want to give lots of time, because supply chain's moving a little bit slow, so we want to give it lots of time, and me not tell you it's going to be out in 2 months when it's actually going to be 8 months, because then you're mad at me, but we will definitely have it out by Christmas this year. We're super excited about it, and we are actually going to make the series 5 books in total. There are going to be 5 Machos. Oh. So if you can imagine that.
Someone's excited.
I'm glad. I'm really excited. I'm glad that you're excited, because Angelique and I, we have so much fun making these. We get together in a coffee shop and we just sit and we talk about puppies and baby dragons and like how we're going to draw them and what kind of characteristics to give them, and like talk about the coolest job ever. It's a really fun time. So we are going to make 5 of them. And what I'm leaning towards doing is, so this very first book was kind of like the introduction to the puppies and the baby dragons, so you get to know who they are. The next 4 are actually each going to take place during a different season. So the next one is going to be in the winter. So it's going to be like Macho and the baby dragons are going to be wearing scarves and winter hats. It's very, very cute. And we get these cool scenes of like ice waterfalls. There's going to be some awesome, beautiful snow scenes. And then the next one, we'll do one in the spring, and then we'll do one in the fall. Wait, what comes after spring? Yeah. Summer, and then we'll do one in the fall. So we're going to go through all 4 seasons, and miraculously the puppy and dragons just won't age. They're just going to stay the same age through every season, and we'll just call it good.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's actually something I know you'd wanted me to bring up, that you noticed you're so observant. I love how observant she is when we're reading. I love that you're going to have 5 of the Macho series, and you also have 5 technically in your series, not including the prequel.
Exactly.
And I was reading this. She's learning about tally marks and like the slash marks and keeping total that way. And again, I'll move it so there's no glare. She noticed this.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And then the slash. So she's like, are there 5 of these? So was that like a little hint that you put in there in the beginning with the font to kind of show there would be 5?
Yes. And it's actually really amazing that you noticed that, because not a lot of people catch that. And that is in every single title if you see it. It's here in book 2, it's here in book 3, it's here in book 4, it's also in Prince Avalask. But what I actually knew this from the very, very beginning, that on the side here where it says book 1, that was never going to be like a Roman numeral 1. That was always a tally mark. And so book 2 was going to be 2 tally marks. And I was waiting for the day when book 4 came out, because it's 4 tally marks, right? And everybody was going to yell at me and be like, that's not how you write the number 4 in Roman numerals, because the number 4 in Roman numerals is an IV. I was waiting for the day someone was going to try to yell at me and tell me I did it wrong, but nobody has yet. So I think they've all realized that they're tally marks. And so book 5 is going to be the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I have been planning that since the very, very beginning. So I love that you caught that it is in every single title, that it is on the side of the books. There's a lot of really small hidden details like that I like to incorporate throughout the books, so that when you do find them, it's like, yeah, I see it. I see what you did there.
And that's all Gemma. I was just sitting there reading and I didn't pay attention. She has a very good eye. She was like, oh, there's 5, right?
That's a great eye.
I even asked me to help her see if there's any dirty laundry or dishes, because I have a good eye.
Yes, you have a very good eye with a lot of things around the house. It's very helpful.
You're better than me, Gemma. I can't find anything. I'm always lost. I have to
big helper with that around here.
Right? You need one of those.
I love the I Spy books, but I just don't know why I like word searches.
Hey, you know what? You're probably way better at them than I am.
Well, I took 2 days to finish one with 14.
That's not too bad, though. But I know you had one more question, and I'll help lead you into it. I know you said you had so many, you couldn't remember them all.
It's about the cats.
That's right. So what did you watch with me? You loved watching
the 60-day nail rain challenge.
Yay!
So you do daily videos with that, and I know I'm gonna talk about this with you more in detail later too. But what did you do? Did you watched along? What was your favorite part?
The cat.
I'm not surprised.
It was so fun to watch with her, because I'd be sitting there, I'm like taking notes and I'm listening, and I'm so engrossed in what you're saying in the video, and then all of a sudden Gemma would just pop up behind me and go, another cat.
Yep. What's your question, Gemma? What can I tell you about the kitties?
You forget. Did you want to know? You wanted to know if she was fostering more right now, right? Because those are usually foster kitties we're seeing, right? And those
are. Yeah. So what that is, and I'm sure that wherever anybody is who's watching this video, I'm sure your Humane Society has a really similar program. So what it is they're stray kittens who get brought into the Humane Society, and it turns out they take in like thousands each year of these kittens, but it's really important at the Humane Society that they don't adopt pets out until they're fixed, because they don't want those pets going out and making 20 more cats, which then come back to the Humane Society, right? So they won't adopt them out to people until they're fixed. But the problem is with little baby kittens, they're too small to do that procedure to get fixed so that they can't make more kittens of their own. So what happens is they have to grow up until they're about 2 pounds, which is, sometimes 8-10 weeks old, depending on the kittens. And so what do you do with those kittens in that time? Because you can't adopt them out because they're not fixed yet. We don't want them to grow up in cages for the first 8 weeks of their life. That'd be really sad. So people like me, we take them home and we just love on them, and we keep them at our homes and we take care of them until they're old enough to get fixed and get adopted. And then we give them back to the Humane Society. The Humane Society does the procedures. They get them vaccinated, they get them microchipped, they give them everything that they need to live a really healthy life. And then they adopt them out to people who are going to give them their forever homes. So we This actually started when COVID very first started, because normally I'm on the road. I'm at shows, I'm at Comic-Cons, I'm all over the place, and I'd never been able to foster kittens. And it was something I'd always kind of wanted to do. So when COVID hit, I said, oh, this is back when we thought COVID was going to be 2 months long, right? I was like, this will be my COVID project. I'll foster a batch of kittens and I get to love on them. And then we were going to keep one and then, give the rest to other families. Well, of course, COVID lasted more than 2 months, we now know. So that's where I got my cat Pumpkin. We adopted him out of our very first foster litter. And so he might make an appearance during this video. He likes to be in the spotlight. He's right over here right now. But anyway, so we kept one of them and we gave all the others away. And I said, oh my gosh, this is so fun. And I still had nowhere to be, that I was like, let's keep doing it. So we got another batch and another batch. And I have now fostered 42 kittens in the last 2 years. Oh. So we've had a lot of cats through our house. And, when you see them on the camera, it's a lot of fun because they're here, they're playing, they're like getting into everything. They're knocking my books over on the shelves behind me. It's pretty funny. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of work that goes into it. Like, imagine scooping a litter box. The most I ever had, I think we had 15 cats in the house at one point when the Humane Society was just so full. We were trying to take in more. Imagine scooping a litter box of 15 cats. It's a lot of work. And sometimes they're sick and you have to help them get better. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes. Like there's a lot of fun on camera, but then behind the scenes, you're doing a lot of litter box scooping and a lot of, helping to make their tummies feel better or whatever's wrong. You got to really help them to get better too. So that is kind of the whole foster kitten experience. And I'm so glad that you enjoy seeing them in the videos, because that is when they're at their finest, is when they're knocking all my books down and playing and going crazy. I love that part, and it's so much fun. And it's so cool to know that you've actually saved a lot of their lives, or in some cases, just at least made it so they didn't have to grow up in a cage. So that is what I do. And I would almost probably guarantee that almost every Humane Society does something like it. So if anybody's watching this video and they're like, oh, that sounds kind of fun, you actually could really, really help out a batch of kittens if you guys ever wanted to go down to your Humane Society and take one home.
I love hearing that so much. That's such a great idea, and something to think about, that maybe like during COVID or anytime, maybe it wouldn't come to mind if it's not in front of our, our face of access of somehow to know it's out there. And I appreciate too that in explaining that, you explained the behind the scenes work that goes into it too, because it's great to be able to say, oh, cute and cuddly, but you also have to back that up and take care of the animal too, right? So that's very important advice.
Right. And especially with them being strays, a lot of times they do need medicines. And so it does get to be quite a lot sometimes, but it is very fun at the same time.
And it sounds very rewarding. That is such an amazing amount of cats that you've helped foster. And that is amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
I really want a pet rabbit, but first I have to show Mommy that I can take care of one plant.
We're starting with plants. Yeah, we have pets, but
a great way to do it, because if you know that if you can't take care of a plant, you're probably not ready for a rabbit, right? That makes perfect sense to me.
Yes, it's a good start. She's doing very well.
Plants don't even move.
How's your plant doing? Is it going well? Good. I like to hear that.
I just had to give him like one water. Go back to the sink. Give him more. And give him more. And one last time. Go back to the sink and give him more. Come back.
Tough. That can be a difficult time.
This was wonderful. Can you thank her for all of the amazing answers she gave you to your questions?
Oh, thank you, Gemma. Thanks for having so many great questions. It makes my job really easy.
All right. So I would love if we start out, because we do have some new members actually who have come in during your feature. So if you want to give them just a brief bio of your Secrets of the Tally book 1 that we've been featuring this month.
Sure. Just kind of like the what it's about spiel.
Yep.
All right, perfect. So basically, this is book 1 in the series. So you've got some magic going on. They are fantasy, the whole series is, but this one's also a mystery. You're trying to solve the identity of both of your main characters in book 1. So it's something kind of fun and unique. So the first is this girl. She wakes up, she doesn't know who she is or why she's really important. She has totally lost her memory, but she finds this list of tally marks of all the lives she's saved. now she doesn't know how she saved all these people, and there are these monsters targeting her, and now she doesn't know why she's a target. So she's got to figure out who she is and why she's so important. And there's this guy who shows up who's pretty eager to help her solve the mystery, and she's like, I don't know about you either. So she's got to figure out who he is and whether or not she can trust him, and she has to figure out who she is all before those monsters can catch her. So that is book 1. And you do actually, you figure out who she is in book 1. It definitely tells you, but then it opens a whole new can of worms that turns into book 2, then 3, then 4. And actually this is the prequel. And then book 5 is going to be the final one. And that is going to be out probably next year.
Perfect. That's actually kind of something I mentioned in one of my reviews for your books this month, because I love the fact that every time something was answered, then there's a whole nother question. I'm like, good, because I just never want to stop reading this series. Like, I love that there's still more to find out.
I know. I don't want to stop writing this series, which is why book 5 is taking so long to come out. But I do, and I loved your reviews. I have to say thank you so much. They were just so kind and wonderful. But you were saying that you would happily read some other prequels, and I do actually have some novellas that I have been working on over the past couple of years that are not necessarily before the story, but actually take place during the series from other characters' points of view. And I've really enjoyed writing those. I haven't worked on them in a little while, but there is some potential for a couple of other stories to come out of this once book 5 is out as well. And of course, we've got 4 more Macho books as we have now learned.
That is so exciting. Oh my gosh. I will be keeping my eye out, because I devoured, like, I reread your book 1 and 2 because I had read it so long ago before your feature. And then I read through 3, 4, your prequel, just in a month. I loved it. And it was really cool being immersed in the world and just going right from book to book, and just seeing how it connects all so well. And I felt that whole, like, you see memes online all the time, like, you know, that book hole of like, oh no, I finished. What do I do with my life now?
Yeah. It's such a great feeling when you can get that out of a series and feel that hole in your heart that needs to be filled now by more books. So I'm really glad I was able to deliver that for you.
You did. I'll be keeping my eye out when your next releases come out for sure.
Oh, good. Well, thank you.
Yes. And thank you. I loved reading your work. And we did actually have, I want to get to the member questions first to make sure I get those in. While we were looking at your cover of book 1, there was a question about which cover is the current cover, because they've been seeing back and forth it's actually on the back of this one. So we've got this cover, and then the other cover is this larger. So how did it come about having the 2 covers, and which one's the current one right now?
So the back, you're correct, it switched. So this used to be the front cover. It was a lot bigger. It was just tally marks on the front cover. And so that originally was our very first printing. So I actually did 2 print runs with this as a cover. But by the time I think it was when book 3 came out, 2 and 3 have just straight characters on them. And so it made sense to me, maybe it was when book 4 came out. One of the 2. When either book 3 or book 4 came out, I decided to switch it, because this used to be the back cover and then this was the front. I decided to switch it so that when you saw the series all together, it was all the characters lined up. So this is the current cover, and I really don't know why Amazon and Goodreads cannot get with it and show this one. I have asked and asked. I mean, this one has been the current cover for years now. So I don't know why they refuse to change it over, but this is the current one. But I mean, it's the same book underneath the covers. If you happen to have one of those ones that has the tally marks on the front cover, you may or may not have a first edition. Like I said, I did 2 different print runs with that one. So you should actually kind of check in the back of the book and see if it is a first edition. It'll say it back here, first edition print run. If it's not a first edition, then it's just me. Here, I'll show you actually, because book 4 is a first edition. So it'll say back here, first edition print run, if you can see that.
Oh, yeah.
So if you do have one with the tally marks, unless it is a paperback, then the paperbacks, they don't really count, just the hardcovers. You should check if you have a first edition, because there were only, I think 1,000 first editions printed of Secrets of the Tally, and they are very, very, very long gone. So if you happen to have one, I would say hold on to it. Although the one that you really, really want is book 2, if you have a first edition of that. And I'm totally going on a side tangent here, but I'm going to go on it anyways, because it's such a funny story. When I printed book 2, I was actually in a really big rush. And so what happened was I was still getting my final proofread done, but at the same time, I wanted to get like my proof copy finished because they take a lot of time. So I figured I would just send off my rough draft, get the proof copy, make sure all the pages were laid out correctly, and then I would upload my final files that had all of the final proofreading revisions and stuff. So there were probably like 20 or so mistakes that I fixed. And then I had sent off for the proof copy a little while back, and I was like, gosh, why is my proof copy not here? And so I contacted the company and I was like, hey, where's my proof copy? Like, I already have the finished files. Can you just go ahead and use the finished one? And they were like, what are you talking about? We've already printed the books. And I was like, what? And they go, we've already printed the books. And I go, you can't have printed the books. You had the rough draft. And they said, they're printed. So I was put in this pickle of, it would have been very, very expensive to reprint them. We would have had to just throw them all away and start over. And I didn't have the money at that point that I could do something like that. And so our very first run of book 2, it was only 500 books, but they are actually the rough draft. They were not the final copy. And so there's about maybe 20 typos in there, which, you know, it's a 400-page book, so it doesn't ruin the experience for you. But if you happen to have a first edition of book 2, there's only 500 of them, and they're actually the rough draft of the book, which is such a funny story. So if you guys happen to have one of those, hold on to that. I mean, definitely hold on to book 1 too if you have it, but really hold on to book 2 if you have a first edition copy of that one. And again, it'll say in the back first edition.
That is such a cool story, actually. Like, even though it probably felt awful at the time, yeah.
Now it's a fun story, and it's, you know, like in hindsight, it really didn't ruin the reader experience. I'm such a perfectionist, and so it ruined me inside to have had that happen. But you know, afterwards I sent it out to everyone. Very few people even brought it up to me. They, you know, I didn't even say anything. I sent them out, and I just hid my head under my desk and waited to hear the feedback. And a couple people came back and said, hey, you know, I found a couple typos in your book. And I was like, let me tell you. So that was kind of the story of printing book 2. It was really a fiasco, but you learn from all of those mistakes. And so if you guys are ever printing, please, for the love of God, don't ever send your printer a rough draft of anything, because just wait. It's okay. Like, wait that extra month, get the final copy, then send it to them. Don't rush. When things go wrong, it's usually because you're trying to rush and cut a couple of corners, and this is what happens. So learn from my mistakes. It's, I guess, the moral of that story.
That is great advice to share. And a lot of new authors too, there's so many things about the industry you don't even know to ask about. You know, something like that could happen and you just don't even realize that's even a possibility. So I really appreciate you sharing that story. I'm sorry it was so stressful for you then, but it is kind of cool. Like, I know stuff like that, when it happens with books, a lot of times it becomes such a huge collector's thing, and it's like, oh, I want that.
Yeah. And I had to kind of just tell myself that at the time, like, this will be a funny story someday. And now we're at that day. Now it's funny. It was really bad then, though.
Yes. I'm glad we're at that day.
Yeah.
So that cover question, I'm sorry, I forgot to say the name, came from our member, Sharon.
Sharon.
Our
great
next
question. Very good question.
And a great answer. That was so cool, what that led to.
Yeah.
Bonnie Jean Yepson Weinman, she would love to know specifically how you came up with the idea for the world that you built in your story.
So it's kind of a funny story, is that it didn't start that way at all. When I very at 12 years old first started Secrets of the Tally, it was set in California, which I'd never even been to California. I don't know why I chose there. I think it was just very cool to me at that time. And it had 5 total characters in the entire story, and it did not whatsoever resemble this. There were no Ascalis, there was no Archie, there was nothing. But over the years, because I told you it took me 5 years to write it, I was just absorbing everything that I loved in books, in shows, in movies. And a lot of the times where my inspiration came from is I would watch a movie and say, oh, I bet they're going to do this. And then they wouldn't. And I would say, oh, but I could do that in my books. And so what happened was over those 5 years of writing that rough draft, it just evolved and evolved and evolved. And I finally, the day came where I made the decision that it wasn't set in California anymore. And the day came when I made the decision to add Archie to the story. And the day came when I made the decision to, put Ascalis in, put these monsters in, because they weren't even there in the beginning. And so it really just evolved over those 5 years as I would get new ideas and replace the old ideas. And so there was never like a set day when I was like, all right, here's my world. It was just that very, very slow evolution all the way from being 12 to when I finished the first draft at 17. And then all the way it kept evolving until I published at 22 or 23, whenever that was. So yeah, that's really where it all came from, was just starting somewhere and just building as I went.
I find that really interesting. And I think what you're talking about too, it's funny how, like, I know even for me in my writing process, that's one of those things with what I've done, it changes so much over time. For some, I think it's hard. And I know I've had this problem to find where's the end part. Like, when do I want to stop adding and changing? Mm-hmm. So I mean, hearing where it came from, I'm sure it was wonderful then too. And I love where it is now. So I love that you found that perfect like stopping point. Like, this is the story, this is the world, these are the mm-hmm. people. So I find that really interesting, the way things like that just build and evolve. Let's see, our next one is Carrie Weston. So I don't want to lead to any spoilers because she's just so intrigued in the story. She kind of wants to know what's going on with it. So I'll read. She said, as she read book 1 this month, she found herself wanting to ask about who the creatures are and why they want her. So what insight can you give without any spoilers on that?
I don't think I can. I mean, that's the whole plot of book 1. Is who are these creatures and why do they want her?
I love she has the intrigue though. Like, she's got all the questions. She's ready.
I mean, I guess the best thing that I could say is like how to describe them. So they're called Ascalis. These are the creatures, and they are very human-like, just scarier. So like, if you can see, this is Prince Avalask. He's one of like the most powerful ones of all the Ascalis, and this is his monster baby, which is a part of the storyline, is that he's very powerful and his son is going to be very powerful. So it's kind of the two of them together. So I can kind of describe like who they are and what they are. And like, one of the defining features when I created them is that I wanted a race that was not defined by pointy ears. That was like my one criteria, because anything that anyone creates in fantasy, that tends to be the number one go-to is we'll just make their ears pointy. And actually, I think originally I did do that. I think I might have started with just a pointy-eared race. Actually, at some point, I think I called them elves. Like I said, it was a very long evolution, but so my defining feature that I came up with was that they have the bone in their forearm doesn't stop at their elbow. It kind of extends past it into a spike here. So when they move their arm, like if they do one of these and you're standing behind them, they can do a whatcha, and they can like kill you with this spike that's sticking out of their elbow. That was my defining feature that I wanted to put into them, just because I just wanted to find something that wasn't pointy ears. As to why they want her, I can't speak to that. You're going to have to finish the story. I'm really glad that you're intrigued and that you want to know. I promise book 1 will tell you, but that would spoil the whole thing. But a very, very good question, and I'm glad that it is on your mind.
Yes. Yeah, there is something very great about organically like reading it and just finding out as you go and like, oh my gosh, I never saw that coming. Actually, that's something Colleen and I were talking about at our beginning of the month interview. You have this really great way of like, you edit in a way to make sure that we don't quite see it coming, but if we read it back, we're like, oh yeah, the clues are all there. Like, it's amazing the way you write that, and that mystery that follows along with it. So I'll be excited to hear her review and her thoughts after she finds out some more answers to the questions.
Yes. Thank you. I'm excited too.
During the month, I do discussion posts in the book club on the corresponding Facebook page. And one of the things I thought was just a fun discussion, we were saying like, okay, so if your book was turned into a movie series, who would we picture as the characters? So I was wondering, do you have any actors and actresses in mind of who you would picture?
I only have 2, and I've only ever had 2. And the reason for that is because I knew that at least with the main cast, whoever I picked would age out of the role before the movie got picked up. I've always realistically known that I didn't want to like set my sights on just one person. But I have 2 adults who I've cast, and they're the only 2 I've ever cared about, and that is Prince Avalask. I've always wanted as Jason Momoa. I am going to go ahead and say this. I loved Jason Momoa before he was cool. He used to be in one of my favorite shows, Stargate Atlantis, which I am currently rewatching right now. And this was before he blew up and did Aquaman and did, Game of Thrones and all of the places where he got like super crazy famous.
You know what? I used to watch that show and I did not even remember that was him.
That was him. I fell in love with him. I mean, I was a teenager when those were coming out. I was probably in the fairly early stages of writing book 1, and that was who I cast as my Prince Avalask, was Jason Momoa. And he, for the longest time, was the only actor I'd ever cast. The second one, he's not in book 1, so this may not mean anything to you. He's a little later in the series, but for Maverick, I've always thought a good like Chris Hemsworth would make, like, I would love to see him as that bad guy, like, and there's a lot of different opinions on Maverick out there, but to me, he's a bad guy. So I would love to see Chris Hemsworth in that role. And I've always thought to myself, if the movie doesn't get picked up for another 10 years, it could still be Jason Momoa and Chris Hemsworth. And that would be my dream come true. That's my dream cast. For these ones, I don't care. I could see maybe like a Zac Efron for Archie, but I think he's going to be aged out of it too. So I don't have any. Yeah, that's about it. That's my movie cast.
I love it. And after reading the books too, I love now, like, I can just picture those 2 in my head as those 2 characters. Which kind of makes Maverick even more fun, actually, now that you've added that.
Yeah, well, he's a very complex character because he is definitely bad, but I actually have a lot of people who like him. And it's a very interesting dynamic because he's literally done every evil thing a character could possibly do, but he's so classy and like, he's just so classy that they're still kind of drawn to him. And I'm like, you guys, I could not make him more evil than he is. But yeah, so he's my Chris Hemsworth is the one I would want for him.
I love it. And I hope your series becomes movies one day. I would love to watch.
Me too.
So I'm going to go on to I've got a ton more questions. So bear with me if you're good with answering.
Oh, we're good.
Okay.
We're good.
So one of my things I love to do, I will take the name of the main character and look up the definition. And I like to know, if that went into naming the characters. So for Allie, I found it's derived from Allison, which means nobility, and is also associated with the definition of harmony. And also, I'm kind of intrigued with some of the names of your characters, again, that come in later on. And I've seen in your acknowledgments in the back of the book that some of those names are very, very close, if not some the same, to some editors that you've worked with. So I'd love to hear about your character naming process.
Okay. So let me just start by saying this is, I would say, one of the worst mistakes I've ever made in writing is naming characters after your best friends. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because here's what happens is that you get stuck with them for 6 books. And if you want to write like an intimate, romantic, vulnerable scene, you are writing it about your best friends. And the awkward that goes into that, you can't do it. So in like late book 1, there's a couple of characters who come in. It's like you said, Carissa, Rabiel, Nessiva. So their names are extraordinarily close to their real names. Carissa was the only one who would not let me change it. I wanted to change her to Cassara, and she said, absolutely not. Carissa is already enough of a fantasy name. I'll kill you. So she's the only one. Emery, like all of them came from like my best friends in middle and high school. And so, and actually we're still very close to this day as well. But imagine Carissa and Robbie ended up getting married in real life, which is why they're kind of dating a little bit in the series. But imagine trying to like get in their heads and write romance. No, it's awful. So please, please don't name characters after people in your lives, because it's very limiting on what you can then do with them. For everyone else, I kind of just pull names out of a hat, to be honest. What I'll do a lot of times is I'll take names that I like and I'll change a couple of letters in them. So like there's later in the series, there's Jalia, which is because I really like the name Julia, and I just changed the U to an A, and all of a sudden it's an Ascali name and it sounds awesome and I love it. I do that a lot. I'll take names I love, tweak a couple letters until it sounds like an alien language, but it's still pretty, and then I'll take that. With Allie, funny enough, growing up, I loved the name Alice and Allison. And so I named her Allie, and weirdly in my life, I ended up like living with and becoming best friends with like exclusively Allisons. It was really weird. One of them is going to be a bridesmaid in my wedding this summer. Like I just ended up with so many Allisons in my life when my main character was based on that name that I really liked. There was really no reason other than I liked it. Same with Archie, no reason other than just that I really liked it. Every once in a while I'll take, especially with like I'm trying to think if I even did this a lot in this series, but every once in a while I'll take like Latin roots. And if I want to describe like a character's personality or like have their name tied to their personality, I'll kind of base it a little bit in Latin roots. That actually happens more in my next series though, rather than this one. I can't actually think of a time I did it in this series, but yeah, for the most part, the names are tough. They're really hard to come up with. And so if you are working in a fantasy world where you have to come up with some that are like, they're not super weird and turn people off, a really good way to do it is take names that people are familiar with and just tweak them a little bit. So they don't feel too strange and off-putting. I don't usually just throw a bunch of letters in a box and make a name out of it. I usually pull from names that exist already.
That's really great advice, because it is really hard in books too. Like, you want to have a unique name, but you don't want something that's going to trip up a reader every time they see it. Because I've seen some names that are so long and complicated. Like, I literally could feel myself stopping for a second. Like, okay, now I got to wrap my head around this name in other books I've read. So
exactly,
that's really great advice. I love that. And also, I thought it was so cool that, you know, your friends' names were in there, and it's such an honor. But it's also good to know the other side too, for like the writing part.
Right. So like, and I've told them since the beginning, I was like, I could kill any of you off at any time. And then, you know, when we get together, they're like, it's just kind of become part of the joke, is like, if anyone offends Halie, it's like, she's going to kill you in the book. Like, they're like campaigning for their characters. So we'll be playing like board games, and they're like, listen, I took your side in the game. You can't kill me off. Like, kill him off. It's become a very fun running joke. And so, you know, in some ways it has been cool in that sense. But in other ways it is limiting. Like, I will say that if I, in future series going forward, I will not do it again. I will not have characters named after people, because it's uncomfortable a lot of times when you have to write kind of the tougher, the more vulnerable, or sometimes the romantic scenes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, and I wanted to know too, I thought this would be fun, if you could put yourself into your series as a character. Would you be an Ascali, or would you be a mage? And if you were a mage, like, what high pressure situation do you think you would find your power under, and what would you want your power to be? Who would you be in your book?
Oh, I'd be an Ascali for sure. They are so cool, and I love everything about them. Oh, I would definitely be an Ascali.
Yeah, I agree. As your series goes on too, and you get to learn more about them and their culture, you fall in love with the Ascalis, actually. Like,
yeah.
I love the traveling baking show. All the people in it. So where did the inspiration for them come from?
Oh, the Pike Place Fish Market. That's who it came from. It's the Pike Place Fish Market, because they sell fish, which you would not think is a super fun job, but they throw the fish and catch the fish. They throw the fish to the customers. They're fun, they're engaging. And actually, I love the traveling baking show too so much. that I recreated them for my next series. It's not the same traveling baking show out of here, but you will see it was absolutely inspired by that same love of like, what a cool thing. They just travel, they sing, they dance, they cook, they're on the road, like, and they're just having a good time. And so actually that is what inspired my next series. Was I loved them so much. I thought about doing like a spin-off in the Tally world with the real traveling baking show. But again, one of the characters, Corliss, is actually based off of one of my real life best friends. And so again, very limiting. I don't want to be writing a romantic story about her. That's not the only reason that I switched up worlds. I also just had a whole new world that I wanted to build and create. And so I thought that bringing that idea of that traveling baking show over into the new world would just make it so fun and spice it up to the best that we could have it. So yeah, I love it too. But yeah, Pike Place Fish Market, that is where I got the inspiration for a show that combines food but also entertainment. And you know, there's not enough of that in the world. It's very, very fun.
Yeah, they really stand out. Their energy, the characters, I love that. And I was already excited to continue to read your work and new series you put out. So now I'm extra excited knowing that kind of energy carries on too from some of my favorite characters. So that's so cool. And another thing I'm wondering if we're gonna see, and if it's a spoiler, you can just tell me. In book 1, after the breathing sea, they go to Myzelga's. Am I saying that right? Myzelga's cabin. And I know she says after, you know, she asks Allie to go back when she remembers. So are we going to see her come back? Could she be a separate novella? Will we see more from her?
She is important in book 5. And it's kind of crazy that has carried all the way from book 1 to the end of the series, but she actually holds a pretty big key for book 5. And that, yeah, that has been a long wait to see her again, but she is important and she always was, and I always knew she would be. But yeah, she's going to be pretty, I don't know about major, but she does hold a very big key to the end of the series.
I'm excited. I love stuff like that too, that stays open for a while and then it kind of closes the loop. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
I'm glad you asked about it because I feel like probably most people have forgotten her at this point. Allie has. Allie sure's forgotten about her by book 5. She's like, oh yeah, you did.
She was in a rough state when she was there too, though. So
yeah, that's true. Very true.
And I love how like full your world building is. So I was wondering, like, there's a lot of places where there's bookshelves, characters reading, the library they keep going back to. What do you envision that your characters are reading? What's on that bookshelf? What are they reading and writing?
Oh man. Well, I feel like a lot of it's like history, and I think a lot of it would be like survival oriented. I really don't know if they would have a lot of fiction at that point in time, honestly. Like I think that a lot of their books, just kind of depending on the era, are more about like practical things and like how to do things, and that's kind of always what I've envisioned as being on the bookshelf. And especially there's when we talk about libraries, I feel like we see in a lot of fantasy stories like libraries that are the size of cities. They're huge. And one of the things, it's in book 2, I'm pretty sure, like I don't know if we talk about it more than once in book 2, but I know like at the end, they talk about like going to the Dragana's library, which is to them huge and holds massive amounts of books. And it's something like 7 bookshelves. And like to them, that is all the books in the world. And I don't know if anybody ever picked up on that, but I wanted that to be kind of clear that to them, that was a ton of books like that. I think it was 7 shelves. Maybe I made it 12 or something. But so books aren't as huge of a thing in that world, just because I don't think they would have a big emphasis on things like fiction, at least at that point in time, because so much other stuff is going on. But in book 5, there is going to be like a bigger library that is going to come in and like have a collection of lots of books that cover lots of topics. And so I don't want to give too much away, but there's an even bigger library than the 7 shelf one that shows up in the Dragana, which, you know, the Dragana is like, it's kind of like their university. It's like where education takes place. So for them to only have 7 bookshelves is, I think, kind of telling of the fact that there really just aren't that many.
That's really cool. And then, you know, I think it's funny in my mind, like what you said, like you see the library and I just pictured it so much bigger than it is.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I feel like no matter how much description is in a book or a pronunciation guide, readers, it always kind of resonates to them in a certain way when they read it. Have you ever had like any feedback or a review that surprised you, that like someone's pictured something completely different than you thought of when you wrote it?
Oh, the big one is the Ascalis. So I describe them like so many different times that they're very human-like, that sometimes it's hard to tell humans and Ascalis apart, that it's really the arm spikes. And I get people who think they look like werewolves. I have people tell me they think the Ascalis are blue. And I'm like, where did you get that? Where? The wolf one, I can see maybe a little bit. I sometimes describe like the facial structure as like a little wolf-like, which to me, I was trying to go more for like the bone shape, the shape of like their faces. That one I could see maybe a little bit. The minute anyone sees the word wolf, they're like, werewolf, got this, know what that looks like. But blue, no idea where that came from. And I have had multiple people tell me that. And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. So, you know, readers are going to read what they want to read, which is one of the reasons actually I wanted to put Prince Avalask on a cover. So I could be like, this is what they look like. And yeah, that's definitely the most common one. I can't really think of any others. That's for sure the big one.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I was wondering too, I want to say it might be in book 2. You mentioned that the Ascali kids are playing a game. And you don't mention much about the game, and I feel like they have such a full culture. Did you come up, like, even if you didn't write it in, like with their own game, kind of like, you know, Quidditch was never an idea before Harry Potter. Like, do they have their own special game that they're playing?
I did at the time. Like I came up with rules for it. I don't know that I would remember them as well now, but when I came up with it, I did come up with rules because I wanted it to make sense in my own mind as I'm writing it, that, you know, there has to be a goal in the game. They can't just be slamming each other into the walls for no reason. I never really go into detail on like how the game is played, just because it was never relevant to the plot. There is like a tiny mention of it that's going to be in book 5, just like the fact that there are Ascali sports that are different than human sports. But yeah, for me, I did design it at the time, but I know that it never made it into the story. So I know that it's kind of slipped in my mind on exactly how it worked. But I did for sure, while I was writing it, I did have a system for how that game went.
I think that's something that makes your world building just so special, because even if you didn't put it in, like, I think there is that vibe that it's so complete. Like, I just figured you must have something. Like, I love that you go that extra distance of, you know, I know everything that's going on in this scene. I can see it, make it happen, even if you don't write it in. I think there's something really important about that for the reading experience.
Yeah, that goes so much towards the immersion of writing a story that's believable, you know, is that you, even if you don't put it in, that you know it, so that the small details are consistent. So if we ever did see that game again in another book or in another series even, that we would understand the way that it works, and it would be consistent with what we saw in that little glimpse that we got of it in book 1.
And you did something else you made that I think is very impressive is the Ascali language, which I don't think they see it in the book until the end of book 2. You've got the page. And then in book 4, like, you went on to talk about the rules. That was amazing. What was that like, creating a language?
That was fun. And again, it's kind of like what I said with like creating the Ascalis in general. Like, I didn't want to do anything that had been done. And I have always just really enjoyed language. I really enjoy listening to the way that it sounds and the way that it works. And I finally worked out this like system in my mind that everything we say is just a mix of consonants, which are like mouth noises, and vowels, which come from your throat. And so, and I'd never heard it told to me like that before, but in college, I would just sit and study my professor's accents, you know, also taking notes at the same time, but you're kind of bored in your lectures. So I would like really listen to which vowels sounded different in different accents. And once you can figure that out, you can actually like reproduce that accent really well. It's a matter of figuring out what the vowels sound like. That's almost always like the main big difference between different accents. And so as I was studying that, I was like really breaking down the difference between vowels and consonants. And I was like, if I had my own language to make, I would separate these into different things. I would have one kind of symbol that makes the vowel, and then I would surround it with the consonants, and then that would make each syllable, because each syllable is just made with a vowel that has consonants either at the beginning or the end. And you guys, this might be mind-blowing for some of you guys, but think about it. That is what it is. And I was like, that is the language I would make, because I've never seen anything like it. That's always my criteria, is I only want to do things that I've never seen before, because otherwise, I'm just kind of rehashing other people's ideas. And so that was, I mean, it's such a weird thing to say that that's what the language came from, but it was that obsession with like sitting in my college classes and just listening to accents and breaking down, if I had a way to like describe words, or if I had a way to write words without, the current context of letters in a row, this is how I would do it. And so that's how I created the Ascali language. And it is very different. Like, you don't read it left to right. You have to read kind of like up and down and then left to right for each syllable. So you read it by syllables, and then that creates the words. And it confuses the heck out of people. And sometimes, I do get messages of people being like, can you explain to me how this works? And my answer is always no. The books will explain it. Like, you have to read the whole series, because as you go, book 2 kind of explains it, book 3 explains it a lot more, and book 4 actually reiterates it again. So if you read the whole series and really study those sections, it will teach you how to do it. And then, I don't know if you've seen, but in the front of a couple of the books, there is a page written in the Ascali language, and you can actually read that. It does have meaning, and you can decode it, and it actually will open up something for you that you may have not expected. So like I said, I like to put a lot of little hints and clues and details and hidden things into the books. It's very special to me.
Yeah, you sure do. That's another question I had for you. There are some really cool little details. Like, I think West had a spider tattoo, and all the animals on the dagger. I think there was a rabbit. Was it a falcon? And there was another animal on there. And I was wondering, like, those little details you put in, does everything have a backstory? Like, I find it so intricate and well thought out.
Yes. Yeah. And, at the time, like, I did actually have a whole backstory planned out for like the etchings on the daggers. And like, I don't actually think it ever made it into the story, to be honest. Because that was an Ascali blade. And I had it very important to them that the Ascalis, they put etchings on their blades. They take them very seriously. They really put a lot of thought into making them like very ornate. To be honest, I don't actually know how much of that made it into the series. Like, we never stopped to explain that. It is just in those small details of, if you notice, every time the Ascalis have blades, they do have some sort of ornate carvings on them. And there is a moment where we get to see one of the Ascalis is like carving on one of the blades. So it's never like, I never expressly come out and like give an explanation of Ascalis really value having ornate blades with carvings and etchings on them. But you can see through the consistency of those details that was something that I had in mind. And I think that's a really important part of writing, is not always coming out and explicitly saying, this is what I'm doing, but just having it there so people can either catch it or not. But that something like that was never crucial to the story. So, either you saw it or you didn't, but it was something that I definitely had in mind, was that the Ascalis really placed a lot of importance on their weaponry. And so that is why they had them so, detailed.
I love it. And I wanted to ask, you've kind of been talking a little bit, there's a lot of fight scenes, and you've got some sparring scenes throughout the whole series. What was that like to picture? Because your scenes have emotion, and then also the vivid descriptions of the fight scenes themselves. So that's a lot to picture all at once. What's it like for you when you're picturing those scenes? Did it take a lot of research?
Yes. So my research is, I have taken every fighting class there is. I love kickboxing. I have done fencing, which, is sword fighting, self-defense. This is why, I'm ready. Like, if someone comes for me, man, I'm the wrong person to come for. But a lot of that was research, because I wanted to know of like how to write those sparring scenes well, how to write like a character who could grapple and fight with somebody hand to hand. And you cannot get that just through your imagination. You can't get those visceral details that you're going to put into those fight scenes just by watching movies. You have to feel it. You have to feel what it's like to be thrown on the ground, or sometimes punched in the stomach, whatever it is. There is such an incredible difference between having experienced that and just trying to imagine it. And so, I love those kinds of classes. And honestly, I need to take like a ton more. I enjoy them so much. But also, when you're taking them, you come up with a lot of fun ideas for the story too. So like, you know, when I was in my fencing class, I took it with some of my best friends, and we would have so much fun sparring, and just like the jokes that would be told and the silly things that we would do during those sparring matches is I carried all of those over into the book. I took the funny moments that actually did happen and I put them into the story. Oh, here's Pumpkin. I told you.
Oh.
And so, yeah, and so a lot of those are just born from my research was just actually doing it. And that is the best thing you can ever do if you need to write a fight scene, whether it's with a sword or whether it's with, you know, fists and feet and whatever it is. Go take a boxing class, go take a fencing class. There's go take a self-defense class. Like every single one of them contributed to those fight and battle scenes. But the emotion is actually what matters the most when it comes to writing. It's this is something that I talk about in the 60-day challenge, is that it's the mechanics are part of it. They're part of making it real and believable, but the actual part that makes the scene resonate with the reader is that there is emotion behind it. There is a reason they're fighting. There are, you know, they're invested in the outcome of like, oh my gosh, if this person loses, this horrible thing's going to happen. You have to have some sort of emotional investment, because you can write the most mechanically correct fight sequence in the world, but if you don't have that driving intense suspense behind it, it doesn't do anything. It reads like a how to fight book, you know. It reads like a textbook at that point, which is not what our readers are here for. So that you have to have that combination of accurate description, but also it has to be fueled by emotion.
That is some amazing dedication. Like, I love that you went and took these classes and enjoyed them and carried so much over. It's really good advice too. Like, sometimes you really do have to go out and actually experience something, which we don't always think of, like sitting behind the computer. Like, but it makes a huge difference. Your fight scenes are very realistic feeling. And that must be what, like, you put so much into it. That is from real experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So another question I have, actually, this is when I bought a lot of the books I have through your Kickstarter. I was able to also get this awesome picture, trying to make sure there's not too much glare, and there are the night rainbows, and I would love to hear about how night rainbows came about.
No, I'm not even sure. I just, again, it was something I'd never seen before. I have seen it a couple times since that book came out, but I had never, I like to think about what I find beautiful. I think rainbows are amazing. I also think moonlight is amazing. And I think just dawned on me one day, what if I combined the two and made rainbows out of moonlight and then, you know, once I had that idea, it set the scene of what that place would look like. And then I was like, okay, I've got to find a reason my characters are here. So that's one of the times, a lot of times for me, actually, the scenery comes first, and that is my inspiration for the scene I'm going to write. This is so beautiful and incredible and just, you know, unheard of, that I have to write a scene that has as big of an emotional impact as the visual impact that I want this place and this location to hold. So I don't know if there was anything specifically that gave me that idea, because I hadn't ever seen it before, except I really like to play around with the things in the world that I find the most beautiful, and sometimes like play around with combining them. And that was one of the combinations that worked out incredibly well. And actually that art piece wasn't even something that I had like commissioned. I didn't know if anybody would be able to pull it off, but I had one of my artists who had read the book several times just came to me and said, hey, I'm drawing this and you let me know what you think. And it turned out so incredible that I had to share it with everybody. And so that was why it ended up coming out in those books, because that scene, I didn't realize anybody could capture it, but she did such an incredible job.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Oh my gosh. Yeah. My daughter's trying to steal it from me. She's like, that's going in my room. That's mine now.
Oh, how sweet. I love it. Yeah, it turned out so beautiful.
It's gorgeous. Let's see. Actually, on the subject of Kickstarters, I did want to talk about that a little bit, because I don't see it as much So I think from an author standpoint, like I don't know if authors really know that's an option when to launch that way. And also from a reader standpoint. So how can readers keep an eye out to see when you're doing your next Kickstarter? And for authors, like how does that work to do a Kickstarter launch? What are the benefits?
So for readers, I would say the best way for mine, at least, is to go to my site, which is secretsofthetally.com and sign up for the mailing list, because I'm always very, very, very active with that mailing list. Now for launching Kickstarters for authors, sorry, I got cat hair. For launching Kickstarters for authors, I have to put out a word of caution, because there is this idea that if you put it on Kickstarter, they will come. And I cannot tell you how incorrect that is, that it does not work like that. So when you go to Kickstarter, what it basically is, if you guys aren't familiar, is like a pre-sale campaign. So you set a goal. So you say, I need this amount of money to print my books. And then if you hit your goal, you get the money. And if you don't hit the goal, you don't get the money. So it is actually very scary in that sense of, but there's a reason behind that. There's a reason that it's all or nothing, because these print runs, I mean, they can cost $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 sometimes to print thousands of books at a time, which is the way that I do it. If you need $20,000 to print that book and you only get $2,000, like if 100 of your friends come together and they each pitch in some money and you make $2,000, you can't do the print run that you promised them. And so what do you do with the money that they gave you? Do you return it? Do you go give them a lesser quality product, which isn't what they paid for? So that's the reason behind Kickstarter being all or nothing. So on my very first Kickstarter, I put down a goal of $5,000. And you guys have to remember, at this point, I had been working on my books for roughly 11, 12 years. And so everybody I'd ever met in my entire life knew about these books. I had told everyone, I had asked, everybody knew that this was my life stream. So when it came time to finally do this, I put it out on Facebook. And then I said, I'm publishing this summer. And every single person who liked my post got a handwritten letter from me that said, hey, this is what I'm doing. I would love, if you've known me for any stretch of time, you know that this is my life's work, my life's dream. I would love if you could come buy a $20 book and help us get there. And so I sent out hundreds of handwritten letters, and those people came through for me. They all came and bought a $20 book, and we ended up making, my goal had been $5,000, and I was so nervous about this because at this point in my life I'd never had $5,000 ever, and I think I needed more like 10 to print, but I figured if I could raise 5, I could come up with the other 5. I'd take loans, I would do whatever it would take. And people came through and we raised right around 7, actually. That was my very first Kickstarter experience. But the part that I need to stress to newer authors who are starting, who are looking at Kickstarter as an option, is that Kickstarter will give you almost nothing. All of the money you make there is from your own fans, your family, your friends, the people who love you already. That is where you make your money on Kickstarter. So Kickstarter is really just, I consider it just kind of like a marketing tool. It's just kind of like to get everyone hyped up of like, okay, we have 30 days to raise this amount of money. Please come pre-buy your book. And then what happens is once you get all the money, if you're successful and you hit your goal, then all of the money comes to you, and then you go and do your print run, and they might not get that book until 6 months later. But that's just the understanding on Kickstarter, is that you aren't going to get it until 6 months later. Just a word of warning, it is, because I see authors, like they see other successful authors on Kickstarter and they think that if they just put the project up that it'll get funded, but you don't see that behind the scenes, 200 handwritten letters that went out. And so the realistic breakdown that I would say is you might get 5% of the money that you raise on Kickstarter might actually come from random strangers who are just on Kickstarter, but the other 95% will be what you bring. So if you've only told 5 people that you're running a Kickstarter and begged them to come buy a book, you're only going to get 5 people, And so that is just the caution that I have behind it. It is absolutely an awesome, viable option if you're willing to put in that work of, you have to market it. You have to do, you have to bring every single dollar that comes through that campaign is pretty much somebody that you brought over to the campaign and you told about it and you sent them a letter, you notified them somehow on Facebook. So Kickstarter is super cool because you can raise the funds that you need if you want to do big print runs. But again, you can publish lots of different ways. So you don't have to spend this amount of money to buy 2,000 books at a time. You don't like, that is not something you have to do. There are very, very easy ways to self-publish, but don't involve needing to raise $10,000 on Kickstarter or whatever it is that you need for your print run.
That's great advice, because there's so many options out there. And I mean, people don't always know about what's out there or how they work. So I really appreciate that. And I did actually want to talk a little bit about your 60-day novel challenge, 60-day novel writing challenge, which I love and is just amazing. So did you want to give kind of a brief just overall to tell people about it first?
Yes. Okay. So I brought my box with me here so that we can show you. So basically what it is when you buy the 60-day novel writing challenge, you get this box in the mail and it comes with a couple different things. Here, we'll do that one at the end. So it comes with this workbook, which this is the workbook that you use to do the whole challenge. And then this part is what really helps me to explain it, because you guys can see this. What it is that every single day for 60 days, you get two things from me. It is a video to watch and a homework assignment to do. And if you check off those two boxes every single day, I'm going to walk you through every step of my process until your book is actually finished at the end of day 60. So literally, you get 60 videos from me, one per day. And it's got kind of like a lesson about what we're focusing on today. And then it's got a homework assignment to do. So, okay, this is what we're learning. And now we're going to put it into action and we're going to use it to work on your novel. So this is actually for anybody, whatever stage they're at in the process, I guess, as long as the book's not published yet. It's if they're just starting out, or sometimes we have people who already have a finished draft who will use this to rework the draft that they have. The way that it works is the first 15 days are just about coming up with ideas. So one of the hardest parts of writing a book is that there's like 3,000 things to figure out when you first start, set out to write your book. You got to figure out who your characters are and what your plot's going to be and what your world looks like and what are your timelines. And there's so many things that sometimes we just don't start because it's very overwhelming to have all of that to figure out right off the bat. So this breaks it down so you just have one focus per day. So like day one is just about your characters. So that's what my video is about. And then your very first homework assignment is that you open up your workbook and you're filling out a personality quiz about two of your characters. So that's character one. And then there's still more personality on the back of that. So for day one, we're just focusing on the characters. And as you fill out these worksheets, you get to know them more in depth. You're having a fun time while you're doing it, but you're also coming up with more ideas for your story. So day two is the same thing, but it's with building your world. So that's what the video is about. And then you open up your workbook and your worksheets are about world building. And then we've got a day about your plot, and we've got a day about fights and action and battle scenes. So the first 15 days of the challenge are just getting all of the ideas out of your brain and into the workbook. And then the next 15 days are about turning all of those ideas into an outline. So by the time you get to day 30 on the second half, you actually know exactly where your book is going, what's going to happen, when, where, how. So then over the next 30 days, it pretty much writes itself because you already know every single thing that you need to do. It's just that you need to hold yourself to hitting a word count every day, follow the outline that you made. And then by the end of day 60, your book is actually done. You get to hold it in your hands, which is an amazing feeling, but that is when you get the best part, which is the winner's pin. So, this is really what it's all about. It's not going to focus on it, but whatever. So everybody gets a winner's pin if they finish. And this is one of the motivational things. Like, I really tried to build it to have as many motivational factors as possible, because I know that's one of the big things that holds us back. It's just the lack of motivation to sit down and do it. You only get this pin if you finish in 60 days. So that is to help motivate you to not skip 3 days in a row, because if you do that, you're going to fall behind, you're not going to finish, and you don't get the pin. But one of the other really big things is that we have our online group. So we meet every single week on Zoom. So you have fellow writers taking the challenge with you, which is also so helpful towards keeping yourself on track and accountable, because you don't want to call in on the Sunday calls and say, yeah, I didn't do anything this week. And then, yeah, so we've built all of that in so that it keeps you on track. And so that you know, this is for anybody who's had an idea about a book in their head for years, and just, this is when you're ready to pull the trigger and do it. This is when you pick up the 60-day novel writing challenge, and it'll get that first draft out in 60 days, which, remember, this is not your final draft. Your book is not like ready to publish, I would say, at the end of that 60 days, but it's out and it's on the paper, and you actually get to hold it in your hands, which is really an incredible feeling if you've never had that before. It's awesome. And I'm so glad you were able to join us, and you know, you wrote your draft during the 60-day challenge, and you watched all those videos, and Gemma watched the videos. She was watching more for the cats, I think, but I bet she actually picked up a lot of that knowledge along the way too. And it is, you know, it is for all ages. I would say, you know, writing a book is probably a little more for the adult range, but you know, I started when I was 12, and this is what I wish I would have had, because it wouldn't have taken me 5 years to write my first draft, and I would have been able to skip a lot of the beginner mistakes that I started with. So that is one of the reasons that I made it, is that it's what I wish I would have had, so that it didn't take me 11, 12 years to go from when I started to when I finally published.
I really appreciate that you made this for authors and aspiring authors, to take all of your knowledge that you use that you've researched and you've noticed, and that you've made an amazing series, and just the things you talk about. Like, it's again like that thing you wouldn't think about until you hear someone say it, and you're like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Like, oh, thank you so much for breaking this down. It's so amazing. And then you also have like the premium option, which is how I went through your challenge. Which I really appreciated, because you already have the community, and then there's that extra side community too, and you add on that option. So I mean, for anyone who's doing the challenge, I highly recommend that you add that on, because even after 2, I got to do the, you know, the one-on-one with you. You read the start of our drafts that were in it, in the premium, and the advice that you gave me about my draft, it was priceless. Like, it completely has changed my second draft into the first draft. I feel like that's what I would have wanted it to look like. So it gave like that, you know, I don't know, just, I wouldn't have done it on my own. I've had the idea for 10 years in my head, and you actually got me a first draft. Like, even when I tried to do NaNoWriMo by myself, didn't finish my second draft. So there's definitely something I want to say very highly, like, your challenge is amazing. And it's, even if they don't want to participate in the community part, they don't have to. And then they have the videos. So I definitely want to put, like, highly recommend out there. It is just an amazing experience. And
thank you. I'm just so glad to see that it helped you as much as it did. I mean, it's doing what I designed it to do, and that is just so satisfying to know that it got that draft that you had been thinking about for 10 years. What an amazing thing that you were finally able to get it down.
It's amazing. And I mean, I can't praise it enough, like the experience that it is for people who, even if they're not aspiring authors, like you were saying, if they already have published works, it's a really great way to stay on track. And it doesn't do like the 30 days, you know, like you've expanded it to make it even more attainable. Like, it doesn't feel like a huge mountain. It's, okay, I'm focusing on this today. And then all of a sudden at the end, you're like, oh my God, I have something in my hands. It's, I can't praise it enough. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was such a great experience. And I have to say, are you going to start doing merchandise? Because you have this great saying at the beginning of each video, and Gemma even still says it to me, because she remembers, grab a cup, like, you know, like, have you ever thought about, you know, I guess I've kind of thought of it like, I feel like an alumni a little bit, like when you go to a college and you get the hoodie, or, you know, or the drinking cup. Like, I don't know. Have you ever thought about doing that in addition as well?
So,
not to make it sound kitschy, but I don't know.
No. I
have that extra, like, you know, I don't know, kind of that feel of still have something. Like,
I have something I haven't actually announced yet, and I actually have it right here. So I have these tumblers that I made. This is top secret. Only you and me know this, Heather.
Okay.
And whoever watches this video. And on the front, they say the 60-day novel writing challenge, and they're engraved. And on the back, they say grab a cup. cozy up and let's get to writing. So here's why I haven't told anybody about these yet, is they are getting sent out to everybody. So my company is called Tally Inc. That is who does the 60-day novel writing challenge, which, if you can't tell, it is named after Secrets of the Tally. So I called everything Tally Inc. with a K. So there's actually kind of 3 tiers, I would call them, to the 60-day challenge, and you've done 2 of them. So the first one is just taking the challenge, getting the draft out. We also have our premium groups, which you have also done. So we have kind of 2 of those. We have one that's for people taking the challenge for the first time. And the way that works is they meet with a life coach every week who's keeping them on track. This is for, like, if you're not sure you're really going to stick to it and you want that extra motivation, you have to meet every week. You get to meet every single week with Colleen and this smaller premium group. And she's teaching you more about the accountability side and staying motivated and really keeping yourself on track and prioritizing yourself and valuing your writing. She's teaching more of that. And then we also have a second premium option, which is after you finish the 60-day challenge, because we have a lot of people who come back and take it again, or they're ready to move on to editing. Our second premium option is that you still get to work with Colleen each week, but then we also have an editor you work with each week. So you're getting kind of more of the motivational accountability coaching, but you're also getting a real editor's critique each week and working with a critique group who's looking at your work. So then you're actually getting to work on the editing and that. So those are our premium groups. So we've got kind of the base of the challenge is the 60-day challenge. Then we got the premium groups. And then we have kind of our very last tier, which is working with us one-on-one. So that is for anybody who has done editing with me, who's done editing with our editor, Lauren, or has gone on to do like a one-on-one coaching package with Colleen or formatting with Leanne. For anybody who's finished all 3 of those tiers, I'm actually sending these out as just gifts, as thank yous. And so I don't actually have any plans to sell these because they would be very expensive to sell. I don't know how much you would be willing to spend on a tumbler, but it's probably not what I would have to price these at. So as of right now, I do have them, and this is actually top secret. These people don't even know they're getting them. So if they watch this video in advance, they're going to know, but that's going to be the only way they know. These are just going to be as gifts right now to say thank you to everybody who's gone through every step of that process with us, because it's a huge commitment, but it's so incredible to see the growth that these people have gone through when they've done all 3 of those tiers with the challenge, the premium groups, and then the one-on-ones. It's just been incredible. And I just want to thank them so much for, sticking with us through all 3 of those tiers and trusting us with their work and just to help them do the best that they can with it. So top secret, but I do have them. I don't have any plans to sell them as of yet, though. I don't know. What would you like to see? What kind of merchandise would you like to see that has the slogan on it?
Well, I think I can understand what you're doing with it, because I think that's kind of it sounds kind of like the upgraded winner's pin. You've got
right. That's what I'm gonna call it.
Yeah. So I kind of like what you're doing, and I get it. I like that a lot, actually, because I guess if you did start selling merchandise, it'd be anyone can get it, but this is kind of you got to work for it. So I think I like what you're doing better than where I was going with it. So I think that's amazing. And you do have a really great eye for editing. The advice you gave me, it's you just picked up so quickly from looking through the part of my draft that I submitted to you. You could tell right away the things that, I was struggling with. You had the perfect advice ready that I didn't even know I needed to ask. The second you said it, I'm yes, this is what I was struggling with. So I believe you still offer your own developmental editing.
Mm-hmm.
How can authors contact you? Because again, I highly recommend the things you pick up on are just amazing. And if you want to clarify too, the different, that the level of developmental editing isn't the whole editing too.
Yes, absolutely. So the way that you work, if you want to work one-on-one with me or anyone on my team, it's tallyink.com. So TALLYINK.com. And then we have a page on there that has each of the people on the Tally Inc. team and what each of our specialties are. So we have one person who does formatting, one person who does the covers. It's actually the same girl who does Macho. She is available to do some of your covers. She's incredible. if you want to work with me specifically, I only do developmental editing, and I only do it on either young adult, middle grade, or fantasy. That's about as far as I'll branch out, maybe sci-fi. And I kind of split it with our other editor, Lauren. She does developmental editing on any other sorts of genres you have. So if you're doing romance, anything adult, thrillers, crime novels, she'll do your developmental, and I'll do anything that's teenage magic sci-fi. So developmental editing is, there's kind of like 3 tiers of editing. Everything's got 3 tiers in it, right? So in developmental editing, we're looking at the big overall structure of your story. So you only want to do developmental if you're in the mental state to make big changes to your book. And some people aren't. I'm just gonna be honest. If you are so super sensitive about it, or you are dead set on this is what my book's going to be, you might just skip developmental editing. But this is it's basically what we look at is your story and the story that you want to tell, but maybe finding a better way to deliver it to the reader so that we have the best reader experience. So I say it's a lot of the comments you'll see in developmental editing are like, these 6 chapters in the middle are dragging and they're boring, but the reason is because, this is our main plot and it's not moving forward. So we really examine why things are not working out. So and boring, I would say, is the biggest number 1 enemy that I see, is like the moments when my eyes are glazing over because I've just lost interest in what's going on in the book. And I'm going to tell you that in the nicest way possible, but also tell you why and how I think we can fix it. Because if I'm having that experience, it's very likely that your beta readers are also having that experience, and a lot of them will not come out and tell you that. So you want to have someone you trust to actually say, hey, you've lost me here. That is really what developmental is. It's looking at the big overall structure. We are not looking at things like typos. We're actually not even looking at really small things like character voice. We might touch on them here and there. So that is kind of like your top tier of editing is developmental. And then there is line edits and copy edits, which we usually kind of like lump into one. And that's looking at more of like a paragraph level of like, this character I don't think would say this in this situation. It just hasn't been their personality in the past. Like, what if we reword it to say this? And then the very final one is your proofreading, which is actually going through and catching the grammar and the typos. That is kind of like the very last one you want to do. And you want to go in that order too. If you're going to do developmental, you want to do it first, because you don't want to pay somebody to do your proofreading if you still have 8 chapters that you have to rewrite in the middle of the book. It doesn't make sense. You want to do them in that order. And so I only do developmental. Lauren does the line editing, the copy editing, and the proofreading for all genres. So like a lot of times somebody will sign with me. So if they do young adult or middle grade, we'll go through and do a developmental edit together and say, hey, these are the big things we should change. And of course, it's still up to you. If you totally disagree with me, you're not under any obligation to change anything. It's your book. But I will tell you why and give you reasons why I think you should change it, and probably some ideas on what I think would probably work better. So that is basically developmental editing in a nutshell. And if you decide that you want to sign with any of us, for me, I pretty much only work with people who have done the 60-day challenge at this point. I might be willing to branch out a little bit, like, if you just have a book that needs to be edited, we could talk. But for the most part, I really, really enjoy working with people who have done the challenge, who have done the premium groups, because then they've already seen 60 videos of my advice. So we're not approaching this from a state of, okay, I don't you already know where I stand on a lot of things. So we don't have to rebuild the foundation of, what I think of makes a good plot and what I think is going to make a really strong reader and character connection. You already know most of those. And so we can just move on and discuss, hey, remember how we talked about plots? Well, in this section, I think we're lacking. I think that maybe we need to tie this in, rearrange this, combine these 2 characters. So that's going to be what developmental editing looks like. And again, you go to tallyinc.com, and that is where you find basically how to work with any of us in that one-on-one capacity. And it's also where you find signing up for the 60-day challenge. And then once you sign up for the 60-day challenge, then you'll get the option to upgrade to premium if you so choose.
I love it. And now, so is that a separate website than your other website too for buying your books, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to make sure people have the distinction of the two websites again. Do you want to just run through that one more time? Like,
yes. So secretsoftheTally.com is for the books. It's just the name of the first book.com, TALLY. And then for the more author services, the 60-day challenge, all of that, that is Tally Inc., TALLYINK.com. And so those are going to be two separate sites, and they do kind of link back and forth. So if you end up on the wrong one, it'll have a link on there somewhere to send you to the one that you want. But if you're looking to buy my books, you're not going to find them on Tally Inc.
Right. Yeah, I want to make sure people can find you in both places. So that's perfect. We do have a lot of, like, we have readers and we have aspiring authors in our book club and authors. So I think this is going to be an amazing just combination of information for them, everything you do and offer. And I was wondering too, because we have that combination, some of the readers, when they were reading through your work, how would you advise them to kind of look at it with a learning eye too? Because reading is research, reading genres you like, or, you know, or that you're writing towards, work you like. What would you recommend as they read your series, you know, kind of eagle eye on to pick up on those tips?
I think with anything that you're reading, I think that's just what is the most important is to almost document the way that you feel and what caused that for you. Because I can't stress enough, really, the reason that we read is for the emotion. You know, that is what keeps us coming back and wanting the next book, is that we know that we felt something in the last book. So that is the most impactful thing that you can put into your own writing. And one of the best things you can do while you're reading is to be very proactive about analyzing really what it is that you're feeling and why you're feeling it and how the author pulled that off. So anytime you feel a strong emotion, like if you get to the twist in a book and you're like, oh my gosh, this took me totally by surprise, really try to stop and figure out what was so surprising. But if it's a very satisfying twist, what specifically is satisfying about it? Why do you like it? And how can you recreate it? Obviously, you're not copying, but how can you recreate that feeling specifically in your own work? Or if something makes you cry, like try to stop and analyze what if something was different in this scene, like if I changed a couple of things, would I have still cried? Or if I, you know, if this had been missing, would I have still cried? What was some of the criteria that really made that happen? And that's just with any book that you're reading, is just be very aware of what you're feeling like. And this takes practice. This really does. You've got to like stop and say, okay, I just felt something. I just felt like I was on the edge of my seat, or I was just sick with worry about this character, or I was so having the best time, I literally just laughed out loud. Stop and acknowledge that it happened, and try to figure out how that author created that so that you can use that same technique in your own writing too.
That's great advice, because I think it goes hand in hand too, like reading the books that you love. And even if you don't have the eagle eye on it, there's that feeling about it, like, I know I want to write like this, like, you know, so it's good that you combine, you have this amazing series to read, you have this amazing 60-day novel writing challenge to follow. I love everything you do. And I really appreciate you allowing me to ask you a million questions today. I think I'll wrap up with the last couple. We've talked about reviews. Reviews are so important. What do reviews mean to you? And I also want the readers to know where to get your books, because I've noticed there are some places you can and can't. Like even I think there's 3 available on Barnes and Noble, but the rest aren't. So if you want to just let people know like where to find you and where to review, that is the most helpful and where you are.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of surprised Barnes and Noble doesn't have all of them. I know they don't have Prince Avalasque, but they should have the first 4. I might have to check into why that's happening. So basically, you can get my books at like any retailer, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. But you're going to be getting paperback copies if you're getting them from there. For the nice hardcovers, you want to get them from my website, secretsoftheTally.com. We always have those. We'll ship them out, and I will actually sign them and send you the first edition bookmarks too. So that is like the pro to getting them from me, is that they're actually coming straight from me, and your Amazon's not taking a big cut of that old profit. So that is actually the best way to support an author, is to buy straight from them. When it comes to reviews, my relationship with reviews has actually changed a lot over the years. I remember when my very first book came out, I would just sit at the computer waiting for the reviews. You know, I was so excited about them. And you know, the reason that I say my relationship with them has changed is every once in a while you're going to get a bad review, right? Which sometimes is just from a troll who just wants to be mean and tear you down. But to me, I still take it too much to heart. And so I actually, a lot of times I've stopped reading my reviews. I've actually taken a step back and said, you know what? People can say whatever they're going to say. They're either going to connect with it or they're not. And one of the things that I do to like console myself when that happens is I go read some of my favorite authors in the world. I go read their reviews, and people are horrible to them too. So it's just, people can be mean. And so for that reason, actually don't read a lot of my reviews anymore. They are definitely extremely helpful for making sales and you know, anything to that effect. So anywhere that you can leave a review is awesome. So helpful to the author. But I've kind of just reached a point where I just leave them alone. You know, I am so appreciative of anybody who leaves them. I do occasionally go read through them, but yeah, for the most part, I actually kind of have taken a step back from looking at the reviews because I found that they were influencing the writing a little bit. Like I'd go into the next book and say, gosh, this person said this one thing about this one character. Maybe I should change the way that I'm doing them. And I didn't like that I was doing that. I didn't like that I was allowing them to have sway over the story that I was trying to tell just because they weren't connecting with a certain part of it. Which, you know, like generally, like, I don't know, it just, I've had to take a step back is I guess like what I have to say about reviews. So I definitely appreciate them, and I would love if you guys wanted to leave them wherever you want to leave them, but I don't really read a lot of them anymore.
I mean, I can see that side of it. It's got to be really tough. Like you have to have a thick skin for that part to read them.
Yeah.
There is always going to be, I mean, the only, I would say, positive about like a bad review is that it shows that your reviews, I think, are not like manufactured. You're not paying for reviews.
Yeah.
Because you can get reviews taken down if they're all 5-star, like, oh, this was amazing. They're like, oh, somebody just put that up there, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's the only positive out of it. But I know like our book club is so great about reviews, and I've never seen them give a bad review. I think it's amazing. There's always a nice way to say something.
Yeah.
So
Or a constructive way to say it, you know, and the thing about that is like, even if you read a book that you don't necessarily like, the hard part is just that it's past the point where the author can utilize that constructive criticism, you know, like we're not in the editing stage anymore. And so like, you know, you want to be fair, you want to tell other readers, yeah, you know, maybe this wasn't for me, but the author can learn from it and maybe incorporate it into future books. But it's just, to me, it doesn't feel like the right time to be criticizing or like saying, oh, this should have been done differently, these 6 chapters should have been rearranged. That's something that an editor should be leaving. And so the reviews are really for other readers. And so as the author, it just doesn't seem super relevant anymore. And I had to come to that conclusion over the course of a lot of years. You know, I would read the reviews and, you know, jump for joy. I'd get 10 in a row that were great, and then one that was mean, and I would just die for 2 days straight. And so it doesn't really matter any, is kind of the realization that I came to, is you're going to tell the story you're going to tell, and people either are going to like it, and there's going to be some who don't, no matter what story it is. So yeah, that's my relationship with the reviews.
that works. You know, and I appreciate it. And it's true. Like the reviews, even if you're not looking at them, they're really helpful when people like your work and put it up there, because that helps those algorithms. Like people see, you know, oh, if you liked this book, like this one, and they'll start bringing your books up. So I definitely always say
yeah, it definitely helps them that way for sure.
Yeah. I love it. And hopefully I know I had a gazillion questions, but where else can people find you? Where are the best places to follow you on social media for your updates?
So I've got Facebook. We've got our 60-day novel writing challenge group on Facebook. We're very active on there. So that's a really great place if you're a writer to come and hang out. I also am getting a lot more active on YouTube in this near future. So my YouTube page is, I would say, where if you want to like keep up with me, or if you're a writer, you want more writing advice, YouTube is awesome. But the biggest thing would just be, if you want to keep up with my books, to go to secretsoftheTally.com and get on that mailing list, because then You'll always know when Kickstarter's happening. You'll always know what shows I'm at, you know, where you can find me, stuff like that. That would be the best place to keep up with me, is that email list.
Perfect. And I think we'll end it off with one more discussion that I had a question about, and I think it'll be fun. Like, people heard the excerpt reading of your prequel, or your you know, the beginning part and a little into the first chapter. And I've noticed this has become kind of a big debate in the reading and writing world. Or not prequel, prologue. I'm sorry.
I knew what you meant. It's fine.
Thank you. So it's become kind of debate. Like, some people don't read them anymore. And I've actually even heard literary agencies say, don't even submit them, you know, and then question if you need them. Your prologue is amazing. Like, as people read the series, they'll see just how much that ties in and how important it is. So what is your opinion on the prologues? And, you know, any tips that you would give people reading and writing them?
My opinion and my tips go together, and it is that your prologue needs to be directly tied to the story at hand. So what I mean is that, like, if you're writing a book about an evil witch who finds the good in herself and becomes good, if that's the plot of your story, your prologue should not be the backstory of how she became evil. It can't be. That's a different story. And this is where I think we go wrong with prologues, is we have information that we want to get into the story that we're really excited about, because, you know, we've done all of this research and building of the world and the characters, that we don't want to just throw this out. But if it is not directly related to the story at hand, I don't want it as a prologue. And so with mine, the thing is, it literally takes place like 1 minute before the story starts. You know, it is very directly relevant to that, what is happening in that story. And that's, I think, why agents are saying don't send it, is because a lot of times we're using that prologue in the wrong way. We're using it to try to get in a flash of the backstory, which, you know, it ties in. It is, of course, relevant in some way. But like in the case of the evil witch, how she became evil is relevant to the fact that she is evil and is becoming good. But if the story is that she is evil and is becoming good, the prologue had better be part of that story and not part of the backstory, not part of a different person's story, not 50 years earlier. The prologue needs to be seeing her doing something evil, or like setting the scene for the story that we're about to tell. So that's my really strong opinion on prologues, is I just think that they're misused. And so, you know, use them, don't use them. I don't think that there's a right or a wrong way, but I do think that the reason that agencies might be saying don't send the prologue is because people are misusing them, and you're sending a snippet of the story that is not the story you're actually pitching. So if you're sending a snippet of the 50 years ago, this is what happened, then you're not sending them the story that they're actually, you know, wanting to read. And agents spend so little time actually looking through query letters and looking through what you send them, because they get so much, that if they're getting the 50 years ago snippet, they're not even going to make it to your story because it's not matching what you told them in the blurb. So yeah, prologues, they can be done well, but that is my 2 cents on them, is just to make sure that they're absolutely directly relevant to the story that you are trying to tell at the moment. Otherwise, I do get a little upset when people skip my prologue, but I understand why they do it. It's because that is a very common theme, is that people, I think, are misusing them by telling a different story through the lens of the prologue. And so, you know, if you skip mine, it's not going to ruin the book for you, but it is very, very cool to see as the series progresses. With each book that comes out, you can go back to that prologue and see something new in it. And so it was very, I get upset when people don't read mine, but I don't blame them. I understand why that has become a thing. And I do, you know, I understand why it's a debate, but we're all creatives here. And so there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just that some things are going to ring better with the reader than others. And one of the things that I think we need to keep in mind is that readers have changed over the years. So something that would have done well in 1980 may not do well now, because our attention span is like this. And so and there's millions of books out there. There's so many other books that people could be reading, that if that prologue is not hooking them right in the beginning, you know, 40 years ago, that might have been okay, like, because they had a little more patience to get to the action and the plot a little bit later, and they don't now. And so that is, I think, one of the big things that's kind of changing with prologues, is that people are not patient to wait for the story to start. They want it to start at the beginning. So that's my take on prologues. Do them or don't do them, just make sure that they are relevant to your story.
I really appreciate that. And I definitely, I recommend people read your prologue, because it does connect. Like, I think it's the best connecting prologue I've ever read. It does come back where it makes so much sense later, even still. So it's great advice for reading and writing that you've just given. And for the new members who have come in, I will make sure at the end of this video, they'll be able to click and watch the excerpt reading, so they can hear that and enjoy. And I will include your links down in the description area. So I just want to say a ginormous thank you. This has been amazing, reading your work, your 60-day novel writing challenge, reviewing, discussing your work. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much, Halie.
Thank you too, Heather. I've really enjoyed this. This has been a really awesome time. So thank you again, and can't wait to draw that winner and go ahead and send them a book or two, or maybe 3, you know.
Perfect. That's right. We're going to draw the winner right now. Everybody watching, please remember to like and subscribe. And thank you for watching. And here comes the winner. This is very exciting. I know some of you have been waiting. We have this awesome drawing giveaway opportunity. Halie, thank you so much for offering this to my book club. So those who bought book 1 and read along this month, let us know. And they were discussing along the way, so we knew they were reading. And they got their names in a drawing to win not only book 2, but also book 3. So thank you so much for offering this. Do you want to go ahead and mix up those names and pick a name? Let's see who wins.
Yay!
You got a name. Okay. Who'd you get? Catherine Smith. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Yay. And also, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, I have to throw in Macho too. So Macho will be in the box for Catherine as well. So she'll get book 2, book 3, and of course Macho, because you need some puppies and baby dragons in your life, no matter who you are.
That is so exciting. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to contact her and let her know.